Hello, everyone. Welcome to our fourth live stream from the Christine Classen Gallery. I want to thank you all for joining us once again. Those of you who are watching us. I'm, of course, Christine Classen, and joining me today is Ronald Boaks. I am going to talk a little bit, and then I'm going to introduce him, okay? As many of you know, we're doing these weekly now, just to further engage people in art, since we can't see the gallery quite yet, although we're changing that. Alberta has introduced a phase 1, so we will be opening for 2 days a week starting in June. And then the other days we will have by appointment, as we have. Just for some people, it's still more comfortable for them to make appointments to come see the shows and to see Candice in the frame shop. But otherwise, like I said, we will be open Fridays and Saturdays in June, open to the public for people to come in and see the shows. As I've said in every single one of these, just bear with us if there's any technical glitches or echoes. It's kind of a new media for us, and we're still kind of working out the bugs. And as I always say, please support artists and support local in these times. The galleries and the artists really need it. Oh, hey, Rick, thanks for joining us today. Okay, and one other little plug before I introduce Ron here is that next week on May 29th, we will have Chris Kuzmanovich joining us for a live stream. And then the weekend after that, on June 5th, we will have Carl White. So those are our 2 live streams coming up in the next couple of Fridays. So born in Newmarket, Ontario, Ronald Boaks has been exhibiting for more than 40 years. He is best known for his bold, expressive canvases that celebrate color and surface as much as they define his ongoing search for balance and beauty. In 2015, Ron moved to a beautiful property in Niagara-on-the-Lake, where he has his studio as well as a gallery, Ronald Boaks Collectibles, which is where he is joining us from today. In the gallery are paintings, sculptures, still life photographs, prints, collages, his ceramic work, and painted vases. And without further ado, I would like to introduce you to Ronald Boaks, who's joining us from his studio in Niagara-on-the-Lake. Hi, Ron.
Hi, Christine. How are you?
I'm really good. It's good to see you.
Excellent.
I know this is going to be a fun one because you always have such great things to say about your artwork, and you're not shy about, having a conversation.
Well, you get to a certain point in life and you realize all of these things, and what you spend a lot of time thinking about what you've been doing and what you think about and what you want to talk about. And I'm open to any kind of crazy questions. I always tell people when they come in the gallery that they can ask any question that they like. And
okay, bring it on, people. You've heard them.
So,
you've heard them. Bring on any crazy questions. Ron, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, I started painting when I was about eight or 9. At that point, I inherited the paint box and all of the paint supplies that William J. Hopkinson left when he died. His daughter was my mother's best friend. So I had all of this stuff given to me. I already had artistic leanings. I had, in grade 4, I had a deal with my teacher, Olive Komar, that I could go to the back of the class as soon as I finished a lesson, and I could paint or draw or do whatever I wanted as long as I was quiet. So it set up a lifelong thing where art has always been a luxury to me. It's always been something that I need to have a clear mind to go out and just do whatever inspires me to be done without having to think about, in 10 minutes I have to do this, or I have to go to work or whatever. Now, that did happen for periods of my life. I had a day job for 34 years working in the professional photographic lab business, where I dealt, anything that Michael Snow did for 30 years or 35 years, I helped him figure out how to do it. I worked with Barbara Assman and other photographic people, and it was, working with art, it was great. But I always have been very disciplined. I'm a great problem solver in that, I would work out, even when I was in art college, people couldn't figure out how I got so much work done because I was always I would paint in the morning before I went to class. I would go to class, I would pull a couple of screen prints, and then while the screens were drying, I'd be out in the hall laughing and joking and having fun. I'd go back in and pull a couple more screens, go home for lunch and paint at lunch, come back in the afternoon and play some more. And people couldn't believe how much work I got done.
Mhm.
But it's just a matter of being very organized. Um, and as for the problem solving, I'm good at that. And that's very handy in a property like this because the place where I'm living now is an Ontario Gothic farmhouse that was made in the late 1870s. And
Oh,
it's
wow.
absolutely wonderful. It's really fantastic. The house is beautiful. The property, all of the gardens have been planted for 100 years. Some of these plants have been there. I have one very ornamental tree that's unfortunately somebody many years ago cut the root on one side and it leaned over. And I'm hoping not on its death knell, but it's close. But it's absolutely sculpturally fantastic.
Right.
Um, so I live, surrounded by beauty all the time. And I mean, I've been gardening in about another 3 weeks. The whole wall of my studio entrance, and I'm talking, 60 feet long, will be just a mass of pink roses and yellow roses up
Really?
ahead. But yeah, and I planted them 4 years ago, and they're just spectacular. They're up to the roof. I had to cut them back so I could paint all the trim this year, and but now they're just exploding. So they're not in bud yet, but they will be soon. So I've always loved flowers. Uh, I've always loved nature. It's hard when you start painting in Canada to not be enthralled by nature and the group of seven. So you're constantly
Mhm.
facing those and bumping into those guys. And as a self educated painter, you learn tricks and techniques and you learn to understand how they made their pictures, what you can take from them and make it your own, which is the secret. And actually, it takes a very long time. It took me a long time. Maybe it doesn't
Mhm.
take everybody time, but it took me a long time to get where I am in the body of work the last 5 or 6 years. It started actually just before I moved. So it's probably 6 or 7 years
Mhm.
of working in something that I find is very personal to me. And it's very interesting, but it's also made me more open. So that's where I'm at the moment. And how do you want to, what direction do you want to
Well, I
move
wanna
forward?
mention to people too, because I kind of forgot before I introduced you, is that Ron was supposed to be our current show right now. We had planned this some time ago that he would be our solo exhibition right now. But of course, because of the pandemic, plans changed and shifted. So I'm also really happy to, be having this conversation with you because I think, down the road we will, it's not canceled, it's just postponed. So we'll figure out a time.
Right.
Um, to get those paintings out here once things kind of settle down. We knew what our new normal is, a bit of a tongue twister.
Mhm.
Um, I guess one
And
of
I
the
was looking forward to coming to Calgary too. So,
I know, but maybe maybe the weather will be better, when you come.
yeah,
Maybe it can be the fall or
yeah.
something, right? Um, One thing that we have talked about and that I've always loved kind of is the titles of your work. And I know they are important to you. So why don't you tell us a little bit about how titles play into your work? Because you're not an untitled, XVII kind of guy. Like your titles mean something. Tell us about that.
I have actually, just for the record, done a few series of small paintings where I use Roman numerals because I don't have that many.
What?
But
You're
but I do
forgiven.
generally, yeah, that's okay. But I do generally, I like turns of phrases, and I collect them in a book. The book is it's a calendar from the Van Gogh Museum in Amsterdam. But I'm into July and August. Actually, I'm further than that. I'm into September with entries of titles. So what I do is I write down a turn of phrase. I might be reading something and say, there's a title there. And I might make two or three variations, changing the punctuation, changing a couple of words, changing the order of the words,
Mhm.
actually, sometimes, and, and saving those in a book for the right painting. And sometimes
Okay.
I have to go right back to the front of the book to find something that's right for a painting. Um, and when I say right for the painting, what I mean is that it's an entry point. It's a point that
Okay.
takes you and says, okay, focus on this, think about this, and does this make sense to you? Does it help you interpret the painting? Does it make you feel any of the clues that I've been giving you?
Mm-hmm.
And by and clues actually is a funny thing because especially in the still life photographs that I was doing, they always had one of my modernist paintings in the background, and then I had a bench with
Right.
flowers and sculptures and various things arranged on the shelf in front of them, and a lot of those there were clues, like the book clues. What is beauty? Um, Art and civilization, different things like
That's
that.
right.
So I like to put those kinds of clues into those pictures. But in paintings, there are clues that um, work in a different way, um, and the titles are just the starting point. But it's something that to get you thinking, to get away from whatever you were thinking before, to help you focus and see this piece of art.
I'm
So
gonna bring
the
this one
painting
up,
that
and here, oh, it cuts off the title, but
that's okay.
tell us about this
The
one behind you.
This is a very recent painting. It's the second last one I've done, and it's called Upon Reflection and Love. And
There we go.
here we go. So, upon reflection, and that comes from the surface of the background, is painted in a way that to me it looks like the light that dances on water that's almost calm on a hot summer day when you just get that sparkly effect. And you can see the lily pads. That's exactly what they are. They're not Pac-Man, as some people. I've never played Pac-Man, but people say, "Oh, there's Pac-Man." Forget that. They're lily pads.
Yeah.
Now,
Pac-Man. I hadn't even
there's
thought about
also
that.
yeah. No, it's it drives me crazy, but it's one of those things that people see what they see, right?
Yes.
So we also have this line that cuts through the lily pads that to me, the line is very important because it it's a portal into the picture, but it's also an acknowledgement of the importance of drawing and painting uh, as equal partners. The drawing is not
Yeah.
subservient to the painting; it's an integral part of the painting. And too often, it's you sketch it out and paint it in. But this line is very important to me. Now, it's also a rule. It's also a drafted line.
Mhm.
It's also,
Okay.
like I said, it's a portal into the picture. And it started out just as a line with two ends. And it actually started out as a vessel where I was uh, making these vertical vessels and putting three clouds of color into the vessels and sort of mind, body, and spirit in a container. And after about a year and a half of that series, my mother died and my wife's mother died in a very short period of time. And I started to feel that if they were free in spirit, that I could be freer in spirit. So hence you have the series of paintings that, like the black one you have behind you, where there were a couple of paintings actually where the clouds, the three clouds became two, and then they kind of escaped out of the vessel
Hmm.
and were free. And that opened up a whole new body of work, of which this is just the most recent one. But there are several other sort of variations on that. There were several paintings in a row that were about conversations. There were several. You have another black painting with a big stainless steel sort of.
Yes. Let me bring up
Yeah,
that too.
sorry, I don't
Uh,
remember the name of it.
no, that's okay. It is it this one?
This one, yes. So
No
in this
clouded
painting,
judgment today.
sorry, what's it called?
No clouded judgment today, which is also a very
There you go.
curious title.
Yeah. Well, it is a very curious title, but I love that title. And actually, I really love this painting. Um,
So do I.
the, these paintings at that time were far more introverted uh,
Okay.
in their complexity and their painting. The background is always really interesting because I view it as space or as background, and it should be complex because the background to all of our lives are complex. Nobody has a very simple life. Um, but I love the shimmering, that diaphanous stainless steel
Mm-hmm.
cloud, for lack of a better word, at the bottom, sort of played off against the other whitish cloud, um, which, I mean, I see those clouds as being the first clouds that you see when something's changing. So everything's always changing, but what I love about that particular cloud in that painting is how off center it is and how well it
Same
balances
here.
out with that
Mm-hmm.
gray piece at the bottom. And those two pieces on the side are just, to me, they make it hum. They make it vibrate so that
Mm-hmm.
you get this very sort of calm, relaxing uh, sensation. Um, it's interesting that you have so many black paintings because in the last several years, I've been really thinking about black a lot. And I spent so many years really thinking about color, and I still work a lot in color. But there's something about black that I really
There
get and I
is.
really respond to. Uh,
I
after
feel
I
the same
moved
way.
here, yeah, I was talking about it with Ken Carpenter, who's a writer in Toronto. He's written for various magazines and
Mm-hmm.
newspapers. And he was talking about the blackness and how it's different somehow. It's really complex. I have several really black paintings. I have one that's a big blackish painting, but it's not flat. It has a lot of the illusion of texture. It doesn't really have much texture, but it has the illusion of texture and just
Well, I love
a
that about your
gray.
paintings, actually. Yeah, I
Sorry.
find that you do. I was going to say, love that about your paintings, actually, because you do create a lot of texture, often from a flat surface. I find that really, kind of beautiful about them. Like the one behind me, I mean, you can't
Mhm.
really see it, but it has this beautiful kind of model texture that you could get lost in for hours. But the surface itself is not, yeah, it's not like you're looking at a whole bunch of goops of paint like you do. They are pretty flat. All of them, actually, that you can see on the screen right now are flat.
It's funny. When I started painting, I was painting landscapes, and then when I was in art school, I went to Sheridan College, which was a mistake
Mhm.
on an art level, but it was brilliant on a personal level because it allowed me to work and pay for my going to school. But I
Okay.
was working in a foam rubber factory, and I was taking home the offcuts of these huge slabs of foam rubber. When they made foam rubber, it's like a 240-foot long by 8 feet wide by on five
Oh,
feet
okay. I didn't know
lump of
that.
foam rubber, and it goes through and gets cut off, but the top part looks like skin or a rock or like pitted skin or like rocks or whatever. So I would take those offcuts, and they were irregular, and I would make them look. I would strip out burlap and make it look like grass around them, and I'd paint the other part to look like rock. And then after I moved uh, after I met my wife and moved in with her, and then we bought another house in the beach, we put my art studio in storage, and the storage people lost it all. So I lost all of those paintings, and I started, you know, I didn't mind because I got some money and it allowed us to do other things,
Okay.
but it was just one of those odd, you know, funny things happen in life.
And
And
I was like, make
so the next
lemonade and
series
lemon.
that's right. So the next series of paintings that I made, and I only have a few left, I wanted to create rock, or the what rock would look like if I was mixing it up and making it. And they were wonderful, a lot of fun. I would staple one end of the canvas to a wall, and then throw and splatter and spray and rub in with fingers and wash it off, and wash into it and let it run and separate. And it was very interesting. And then I started scraping into the sides. And eventually the scraping into the sides took over the whole picture. And
Okay.
that lasted for about 10 or 15 years until I started that series with the three clouds. And I wanted to go back and start using brushes again and using drawing and different
Mhm.
things like that. And that evolved into what I'm doing now. But some of the things that I'm doing now go back to that scraping in from the sides. And by that I mean there are sections. Now I'll get a bit closer to this painting. There are sections here where I've painted it in blocks of color, and then I've scraped across it so that the colors get blended. I don't know how well you can see that, but if you look at it closely, it's almost like a Richter in some ways, where you get that pulling of one color over another. And then
Okay.
I've gone in after that and um, drawn in scribbling as opposed to the
Hmm.
the other line. So we have those two opposite kinds of drawing in the same painting, and come up with something that I find is very interesting. And it's you know I don't often look at things for a long time when they're done, but when you're working with oil paint, it takes them a long time to dry. So, and because I've been
Right.
waiting for some more supplies, I've been, riding a stationary bike to keep active while it's been cold out here, and then looking at this painting for an hour and thinking about it and thinking, oh yeah. So, I have a bunch of things ready to go as soon as I get these damn oil sticks.
Right.
But
Exactly.
anyway, so,
Well, and let's talk
but
about
what I
that
was going to
too.
say about, sorry?
Well, I was going to say, and that's maybe we can segue into that, because I was going to ask you how, the pandemic has like affected your practice. And, for everyone out there, Ron and I were kind of chatting a little bit about this before. But for you, a lot of it's been access to materials has been the problem.
That's the only downside that I can say. Um, where I live, it's I'm a lucky guy. I live in paradise. My
Right.
wife is a fantastic cook. We have a wine cellar. My son and his fiance are working from our home, have been for the last
Mhm.
month, and will be for another month or so. And it's been great having them around. And every day we find something to celebrate and drink wine and have play cards and do stuff. So
Mhm.
my life is really, pretty good. But I know that it's not going to be like that forever. And I know that a lot
Right.
of other people are having a very hard go, and a lot of people are discovering art as a therapy. But I mean, it's always been a
Mhm.
therapy for me. So,
Right.
I think it's great that they're playing. But I I hope that one of the things that comes out of this for other people that are stuck in their house, that are thinking, well, I can't go on vacation. Maybe I should buy some art and think about that and make my place beautiful as
Think
a
about that,
maintenance.
everybody. Instead of vacation, buy art.
Yeah, it's a great
Beautiful
idea.
things here.
Yeah,
Well, it is.
but you get to me, I get a lot more value out of um, looking at art and living in a beautiful environment than I do when I go away. And I don't travel that much, and I'm quickly losing my interest. We were supposed to be going to Peru
That's right.
in April, March and April, and of course that
Mhm.
got canceled. We lost half the deposit of the stuff, and we were going to take
Oh, shoot.
we were we were trying to go with a guide and all that stuff. But I'm really just happy to be here because I have no shortage of things to do, things to think about. I've done one sculpture since this year, and now I usually do sculptures more in the summer because I don't heat the sculpture studio. Um, and by that I mean below the gallery is the sculpture uh, studio where I have, you know, it's a really beautiful room. I reparged all the walls, and I just have all of these ladders that were on the property ringing in the room, and with
There we
plywood
go.
on top of them, and then all these pieces of steel. I have about, I don't know, several thousand pieces of steel that are just, you know, things that people have tossed away. The sculptures that you're looking at now, a lot of those pieces are offcuts from some industrial usage where somebody needed, however many pieces in those shapes, and these are just the piece that was left over. So this particular sculpture is saving my bacon this year because it's a commission for
Okay.
Daniels Corporation in Toronto to go in a condominium. All five of those are going in as one sculpture. Um, but really, they're like personages to me. They're like people. Everyone is different. Everybody, some are tall and skinny, some are short and rounded. It's it, they're like people, and I see things like that. So, in terms of thinking of painting and sculpture, um, it's really a matter of finding for sculpture, it's a matter of finding two pieces that start talking to each other, and then I
Okay.
just join in the conversation and take it from there, and do whatever I have to make it work. Whereas with a painting, you're thinking about a color and you're thinking about perhaps, like this painting behind me that we started with,
Hmm.
perhaps, this is the first time actually that I painted directly on the canvas with the oil paint. The other paintings that I have done have all been paper that has been uh, glued on to the surface
Oh,
of the
gotcha. Collaged
paint
on. Right.
because the paintings are done in such very, very different ways. So, in terms of inspiration, it's, once I get going on something, it's great. But one of the really fabulous things about this place is that I can lay out a sculpture, and I can lay out several sculptures because I have lots of room. I can weld a bit, and I can leave it and think about it. And I can
Hmm.
go and do a painting or work on some aspect of a painting. And
Okay.
when it's at a certain point, I can walk away from that, and then I can go and, I can play with clay if I want to, although I've been too busy to do that. But,
Right.
I have gardening to do and stuff. I have no shortage. I mean, I live in luxury. It's, you know,
Well, and you
I
have this beautiful space too. Maybe like well, you were going to give us a little bit of a sneak peek of your studio too. Why don't we? Because you have this
sure.
beautiful property, and I haven't been there myself, but Ron has like a studio and this gallery that his Ronald Boaks collectibles. Because that's where you are right now, right? Is the gallery?
That's right. I'm in the
Mhm.
gallery. So I'm going to give you a quick
Open to the public.
walk around. You know what?
Okay.
I'm actually just getting I thought I had my thing plugged in here, but I'm getting a low battery. So maybe we should do another question and I'll
Okay.
just boost
Yeah,
the
sure.
power.
We'll charge up the phone a little bit. Um,
There we go.
One of the other things I did want to talk about was the use of humor in your work, because um, I think more so than a lot of formalist artists, where it's kind of just about composition, and you do kind of bring a playfulness to your paintings that I
Mhm.
think is another kind of entryway for a lot of people into the work. So tell us a little bit about your use of humor, and I'm going to bring up a couple more images here.
Okay. Do you have no sky falling today, or whichever version you have of that?
Yes.
The one with the black beret on it.
Oh, shoot. I did have it loaded, but now I can't find it. Okay, anyway.
Okay. So
Shoot.
humor to me, humor to me is a very important aspect of life. Um, I love laughing. I love telling jokes. One of the things that was great about working was that there was a circle of really funny people that came around. You know, lots of people were very funny. If you knew that, Michael Snow was a very funny guy.
Mhm.
We would trade jokes and laugh and have a great time. But laughter is something that's important. And in terms of artwork, um, I think a lot of people take themselves too seriously. Uh,
Mhm.
there's a
I
lot of
agree.
um, sociopathic artists, for lack of a better word.
Right.
And I won't
Well,
name
let's
anybody,
just
but
call it what it is. Let's call it what it is.
yeah, it's artists are funny people. And they sort of can be in one of two camps. Either they're fun to be with or they're not fun to be with.
Mhm.
And I like the ones that are fun to be with. Most of my friends actually are musicians because um, they didn't fail Sandbox.
Right.
They know how to get along and have fun and to work together and that you can have a much better relationship that way. If I didn't have a sense of humor, I wouldn't be married to my wife, who she has a great sense of humor. But if I didn't have a sense of humor, I wouldn't be here. And I don't know, humor gets you through so much, um, and I think that it's important to look at art in your environment that isn't overly serious, uh,
Mhm.
or what I would call filled with seriosity,
Mhm.
as,
Right.
as an example of silly humor. I like to make up words too, which I do on occasion. But seriosity is something that people take the wrong way in art. And I think that you need in your environment to have something that makes you happy, that makes you smile, that
Mhm.
makes you feel good about life. It's too easy to think about things that depress you or or how at this particular time how rotten the world is, or the situations
Yeah,
that
I
come
agree
up.
100%.
But but it's interesting. I was lining up for bread today at this a gluten-free bakery that's fantastic. It's called Edible Options in St. Catharines, and the people were all great. We were talking. I got a great place to a great supply of flour for making um, either pasta or pizza with this
Okay.
Italian flour, and I found out where to get it, and just sharing stuff with people, and it was great. And I think that's one of the really great things. But sharing jokes and stuff, it's great. And humor, I don't know. I mean, humor is often comes out in the titles, and the titles again, it's a
True.
trigger. It reminds me of something. When I was young, I also had when I was 12, I had a Global Mail paper rig, and one of the things that I used to remember was that on holidays, there would be a printed piece that would slide into the front of the paper box that said "Only paper today." So, a little while ago, I was thinking about a great title being not "Only paper today," but "Only mischief today." And
Right.
it's
Mhm.
like, why not be mischievous? Why you need a sense of mischief and a sense of mystery in a painting. You don't want the problem that I have with a lot of landscape painting or super realist painting is that it is beautifully executed, but it's always that, and it's never anything else. They're like a lot of
Okay.
the
I
work
see
that
what
I
you're
see from major artists on the East Coast leaves me cold. It's just yeah, okay, beautifully done, but I don't know what to think of it. I don't, it
saying. Mhm.
doesn't make me feel anything. So
Yeah, fair enough.
if you can get a bit of humor, a bit of mischief, a bit of mystery into a painting, that's a good thing because it's never the same. You might look at a painting for 6 months and then one day say, "Wait a minute, there's a figure in there. I see something completely different." And it changes your life and it makes it better, I think.
Well, it's so true. I mean, I'm going to bring up actually on that note, I'm going to bring up a couple of these pieces, these new pieces that have the figure, but I did want to say something too because um, I remember doing a couple art fairs right after 9/11 and in New York City actually, and I was really struck by the fact that um, the New Yorkers really had zero interest in the nihilistic kind of art that, like people, they were interested in color, fun, and I think we're probably going to see this after this pandemic too, is that people are going to want that lightness in their artwork, that humor, because there's enough serious stuff in the world. There's enough, darkness and, you know, um, uncertainty. Like let's have some fun. Let's have like crack a joke. And I think your work really kind of hits on all those points. So that said, I'm going to segue into, because these are a couple of new pieces, and when you're talking about the figure, it reminded me I wanted to bring these up because this is a motif that has kind of reworked itself back into your work, right? And I just love this orange, Ron. I love this orange. It's
I
beautiful.
love that orange painting too.
Mhm.
I started that painting before I moved here, and
Okay.
it
Oh,
was very
really?
different in the original. The only thing that's left from the original are the two pieces on each side and the block of the color that's in the bottom below the figures. And I've repainted that background probably about 8 different times to get
Really?
just the right orange and just the
Mhm.
right amount of lightness. Like there's a very light center to that that takes away from the like it being just one flat color. There's a bit of depth in that color as well. And then the figurative element is a collage element. And I worked in collage. I've always worked in collage, but I
Mhm.
did a lot of collages in the early '90s when the recession was there and I didn't have a lot of money for materials. So I did a lot of collage work. I also did a lot of figurative work where I would take a piece of colored painted paper and I would just cut out two shapes on just randomly, and then I would put those shapes on one on each side, and then put other elements to make up a female torso in between those two shapes. So the shapes would
Okay.
all
Okay.
often have, oh well, there's a black, there's a back and the shoulder blades. There's the breast, and there's the stomach, and the legs and the calves and everything. And they would be all jumbled. They wouldn't like it wouldn't be just a straight figure
Mm-hmm.
cut out like that. It would be just aspects of those shapes sort of slammed together, if you like. But there was always one torso in the middle, and this. I just cut out one piece out of a piece of paper to see something, and I realized that not only do I like the piece that I cut out, but the piece that has that hole in it now has, of course, the same figure. So if I add something to the back of that, then I have an
Right.
illusion of a figure that maybe makes it look like marble or something.
Okay.
Because I've
And
never
it's a
just
collage
found.
element, is what you're saying.
Sorry,
It's a collage element. That's how we see the
that's right.
figure.
That's right.
Okay. I know one of my
So
friends is just teasing me. You and your orange laugh out loud. It's true. I am very partial to the color orange, but
orange is a very difficult color, um, but it really has to be complex. It has to have a bit of pink in it, and it has to have a bit of earth in it to make it work really well. And it has to be transparent enough that it kind of glows. Because if it's too flat, it just says, I'm orange, piss off.
right,
But
right. Okay.
this, but getting the right level of orange, I guess, if you like, or any color is important. Now, the other painting that you have up, that's sort of slate green painting,
Mm-hmm.
is much front. They were done originally at the same time. The elements of the color originally started out as palettes, uh, and my
Oh,
daughter,
okay.
who is now my daughter, who's now 32, did this wonderful palette. She did. I was, she was painting for school and stuff. She's since quit
Mm-hmm.
painting, which is too bad because she could have been really good. My son is really
Right.
good. He's still, but um, she had this palette left over from painting, and I started looking at it, thinking, that's pretty nice. So I
Right.
added some splatters and stuff to it and put it into a collage, and that collage is in my living room and has been for years. It's wonderful, but it got me thinking about color in a different way, and how when you have a palette in front of you and you have all of these colors mixed, or you're starting to mix them together on the palette, it's really a wonderful piece by itself. I've always liked, a lot of those very expressive palette shapes that people used to use,
Mm-hmm.
uh, but I just started to use palette paper and mix the palettes, and I'd be painting something, and I'd save them both. And when I started teaching classes about 2 years ago, I guess, in my studio, um, I would save the oil palettes. When they were done at the end of the night, I'd say, "Yeah, are you finished?" And they'd say, "Yeah." I said, "Okay, so let's have some fun." So we would take the palettes and smash them together, rub them, and scrape into them and all kinds of
Oh,
stuff, and they came out beautifully.
I
And
know.
so, I saved some of those. Some of them wanted to
Happy
keep their
accident.
own, but I saved them, and they're actually glued in place on the paintings prior to
Interesting.
this one, which was the first one that I actually painted the oil paint right onto the painting. And to be honest, I was a bit nervous about that, but in the end, it worked out just fine. Because I
Right.
didn't want
It
it to
worked
be,
out well.
you know, yeah,
There
I
was
wasn't
one
looking forward
question
to it.
here. Sorry, Ron, I introduced. There's a
Go ahead.
question here from um, about zooming into the images. Is it possible to do? It's not in this format, but what I can do is upload these images to our website where you can see them, larger than kind of thumbnail size. I will do that tomorrow so that they will be available to view on our website. I'll create like a little section. Or alternately, if, because it is, again, like one of my friends, I can also email you some images, Jen, so you can see them in real life. I'm just as excited to see these in person as you are, because I know we're just seeing them on a screen. But hopefully, like I said, once we have the show for Ron, we'll actually be able to see them in person as well, because it is like there's so many subtleties to these paintings that you just do not get in reproduction. What else do we need? Oh, we were going to talk about too. Well, there's a couple things. We were going to talk about I mean, going back to the orange and the sense of color, because I remember from our last show, we had that pink painting that you talked about, the particular tone of pink being a color they used in hospitals to calm people. Is that correct?
Yeah,
Maybe I'm
actually,
getting the
with
details.
jails would use them when
Oh,
somebody
jail.
was they would when a prisoner was getting out of out of sorts and getting violent, they would
Okay.
put them in this very, very particular pink room. Everything was pink in the room, and it would reduce some of them to tears. They couldn't they couldn't be violent in that environment,
Interesting.
and I just
Interesting.
find that interesting.
Mhm.
Pink is a very interesting color as well. It has connotations. Like I, I think I might have had one or two pink shirts in my life, but it's not something that I feel comfortable wearing. But I love pink as much as I love orange, and um, there's
I'm
something
bringing up
about
this
pink.
blue painting too.
It's really timeless. I like that blue painting too.
I know. I
That blue
love this
painting.
blue as well.
When I opened the gallery, that was on this wall,
Mhm.
and that's a painting that came out of that series, the Spirit Arise series is what I call it, where that was the release that I was talking about. And here, what I wanted to have was black and white playing as equals on this blue. And the black, I don't find angst ridden. I find it
Mhm.
energetic. And it has quite a bit of there's more color variation than you're picking up in the picture here.
It's true. Yeah.
More painterly flow in that. Whereas the white is pretty much as you see it, and the two things work so beautifully together. And it's a really nice painting.
Well, I do love these shapes, like the one in the painting behind me too.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, this wasn't some. I'm going off script now, but like, tell me a little
Okay.
bit. Tell us, because I kind of know a little bit more about these shapes. But why don't you tell the viewers a little bit about these kind of? I mean, there's the clouds, the more soft, kind of puffy clouds are sometimes thin, sometimes they're big. But then these are a little bit. They're cloud-like, but they're almost kind of brains, right?
They're kind of like brains, but if you look at them in another light, they're like groups of diaphanous figures, if you like. You can
Right.
see
Okay.
different
Okay.
people talking to each other. So they're meant to be the spiritual side of the conversation. So it's like the voices of many spirits in that. And a lot of people see them
Mhm.
as brains, and brains,
It's like a
consciousness.
brain cloud. I see it as a brain cloud. Like, I mean, it's
Mhm.
literally behind my head right now, like a big aura.
Yeah, but some of them are
Yeah.
like flowers as well. If you look straight down at some flowers, some of them are like that. Not those two that you have, but
Mhm.
they actually became the clouds because people. I found people didn't react to them as well as I thought they might. I think that they interpreted them as as brains and were put off by that, and I
Okay.
found that was unfortunate. So they sort of morphed
Right.
into clouds.
Right.
I like the clouds a lot better. Um, so they just became that. But I mean, things evolve and go back and forth.
Mhm.
I've had several conversations with people, and I had two of the same conversation with a friend of mine. I haven't seen this guy for a long time. We haven't talked because um, I was alluding to you go this way in life for a while and then you hit the wall and you go this way in life and you go back and forth and back and forth. And I was wondering if each time you have to go less far away to come back to the center point. And I
Okay.
wondered what happened when you got to that point of vibration. What happened? On two occasions, I had a conversation with this friend of mine, and we used John Lennon as an example for one, and Jack Bush as an example for another conversation that was had at different times. And we stopped talking because on both days, the next day, following both of those conversations, both of those guys died. So we said, enough of that. But
Right.
just
You
to
gotta
show you, like
let
how
it.
weird life can be at times.
Mhm.
So it's just one of those things, but it's interesting. But
Okay.
it's not
There's
something
a
that
couple questions here. Sorry, I
okay.
interrupted you again. But there is a question here from Teresa Pozniak, who is one of our other artists. She says that she's interested in your composition and the central focus. Any comments on that? I mean,
Yes, actually, I was going to bring this up as a subject. One of the things that I realized when I started teaching, I talked about formats, and you have a portrait format, you have a landscape
mhm,
format, or you have an overall abstract format. And what I have here is either an abstract format combined with either a portrait or a landscape.
okay.
So the painting
Mhm,
behind me is obviously a landscape. The orange and the slate pictures, I see them more as portraits. But it has to do with that central. I just like the balance of that. And
mhm,
if you look at them really carefully, my lines are never exactly center. Those images are slightly off center. The clouds are sometimes very much off center.
mhm.
Um, it's just a matter of coming, to my mind, to the right balance to have those things where they're just kind of
Okay.
vibrating and and not perfect. I'm not interested in perfection. Um, I,
Mhm.
I I want them to
Okay.
be something that you can interpret and like the idea that you're seeing that it's slightly off and that you can enjoy that because lots of things in life, some of the funniest things in life are off, but that's I hope that answers the question.
Well, I think it does, and again, because we were talking a little bit about this before we went live, was about how you always have the elements kind of on the side that could, like you said,
Yes,
act as like a curtain or, to create kind of a stage for your painting.
the blue painting that you're showing is a very rare
Mhm,
exception where I don't have anything on the sides. But usually I like to have something on the sides. To me, it acts as the border. It's like curtains on a stage. It's like if you go to hug somebody, your hands
right.
are going out. And
I love that.
it's
A
your
hug from a
peripheral
painting,
vision. Yeah. So
even
it's
more of
like
a reason
that's
to
what they do for me. But they also keep the energy into the painting. Like you can't go to the outside, the eye pushes you back in. One of the other
Mhm,
things that if you look closely at a lot of paintings, there are often just there are dots or there are something that create a triangulation. And the
mhm.
triangulation is something that I was talking about in my classes as well, because they help keep your eye roving around the painting so that you don't get lost, you don't get bored. You're always thinking, what's that? Oh. And it's the same with the X,
Right.
Y, and Z that I
I'm gonna
often
bring
put in my
that.
work. Now, X, I often put in things like, well, X, Y, and Z, but they all
Mhm,
often have double meanings. And double meanings are something that I really like a lot. Um, and a lot of the titles actually have double meanings, or they can be taken in various ways. But almost every painting that I do has an X, Y, and a Z in it because X and Y, X is the female chromosome, and actually with the paintings that have female figures often have two X's in them to be the female chromosome.
okay.
Okay, and then the other paintings have X and Y and a Z for the parameters that mark a map. Like the three areas I have on my property. I actually, well, the Y I have in being repainted, but I have an X in one
Okay.
corner and a Z at the back and a Y out here. Now, I'm also,
Mhm.
I have an X at 13th Street Winery, the gallery that they have there, and I'm being commissioned to do a Y and a Z for there.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, so but it's interesting. And those X, Y, Z things are all things that are triangulated as well, so that it keeps your eye from moving. You have to look for them. Um, in terms of,
And I do like
you
that
were
as well,
asking me
because it
about,
becomes a bit of a Where's Waldo a little bit for me, because like, knowing that about your paintings, like, sometimes
mhm,
now I kind of challenge myself to find them, right? Like, because
mhm,
there is often that line, um, that access, but sometimes, yeah, the Y and Z are, like, combined, sometimes they're separate, like, and
yeah.
I kind of find that a bit fun that these elements are kind of constantly present in your work.
Yeah. So you showed me a painting that you have of mine. I don't remember the title of it. But I think it has to do with something on the beach or something. Anyway, you have an X and a Y that are joined. So that X and
Mhm.
Y is obviously a male figure lying on the beach. Just in case you didn't figure out that not only was it
Right.
X and Y, but it was a figure. If you look, you have 2 arms and 2 legs and a torso, right? So
Yeah, no, it's true.
just me
Um,
playing around, you know.
Well, and that's again, it just goes back again to, because that sense of fun, that sense of humor, that kind of play on words, like all these elements again, like I said, you don't often see in kind of more formalist abstract painting. And I think that's what's so refreshing to me. Well, it's always been so refreshing to me about your work is that, the compositions are beautiful, they're very thoughtful, they're very complex, but there's also this lighter side to them. It's not all so serious. And we kind of talked about this a little bit the other day too, like a couple days ago, because you were talking about how you want the paintings to be more about fun than about reverence. That.
There is that element, but um, I'm not a diehard modernist
Mhm.
because of the way I view my life and with the things that I look at in life and things that I like. I'm not a complete modernist. I'm somewhat of a failure as that because I was painting a lot of paintings where my less is more, the modernist mantra, but
Right.
modernism also looked at beauty in a different way. They didn't see beauty in a woman's form or in nature. They saw beauty as a sublime. For the interpretation of beauty, it had to be the sublime. So
Hmm.
I got bored with that after a while, and I
Right.
felt that when I started doing the photographs, I started to realize that I missed the actual beauty. The reference to women, the reference to flowers, the reference to lily pads that I like, other aspects of nature. All of those things are important to me. So I want to express them and have them kind of intermingled into
Hmm.
the work. So I'm not really a dyed in the wool modernist. I'm
Well,
sort
I'm
of,
glad you aren't.
for lack of a better word, I'm an enougghist, where I have
And
just enough and that's it. Um,
that's a
I
good way
think
to
that
put it, though.
yeah, yeah, that's true. I'm not a minimalist, that's for sure. Although some of my paintings are quite minimal, but more often than not, there's just enough. You know, were there any other questions or?
Well, I was gonna not. I mean, there was one comment from Rick Dukeman said that like behind me we were talking about these shapes, and he said it was more like a
Mhm.
lace crown, and that's an interesting way of seeing it too, right? I mean,
Yeah, they
especially
are
on me,
very lace-like.
it's
They are
very much a
very
lace
lace-like.
crown, a lace halo
Actually,
for me.
the way they were painted, it's a lot like painting lace. They,
Okay,
the way, yeah. So,
so Rick,
but
you
it
were
was a
onto
lot of fun
something.
to paint. But they were like very like delicate twists, twists and twirls, and it's
Hmm.
interesting how you apply paint. But it doesn't matter how the paint gets applied; it's the result that it counts, right? So,
No, it's so
I was
true.
noticing. I was noticing on the painting that you have beside you, the whitish background one, if
Hmm.
you look in the block of color, there are 2 X's there for the female form that's above it. So to save you looking for the X's in that painting, they're
Oh,
both
here,
together.
we'll make it a
Yeah,
bit bigger there so people can see
yeah,
it.
yeah. There are 2 X's in the middle. So there's your reference to the female in terms of chromosome, and then you have the female torso above that in
And a
repose.
couple lily pads too.
Yeah,
I love this. And the beautiful modeled background. Um, one question
those.
that just popped up is that there seems to be a painting within a painting in your works.
Um, There is, and if you think of that as the painting that's the background is the background to your life, and the
Hmm.
painting that's within that is your emotional complexity, how you
Okay.
view life. So they are very much paintings within a painting.
Yeah.
Um, Now, we were going to ask me about the backgrounds. The last time I
Yes.
was in Calgary, we talked about my blender
Blenders.
background painting. Yeah, where I would,
Blenders, people.
mix.
Blenders.
I would throw a lot of liquid, matte medium, and paint into a blender. make it good and frothy, and then spread it as quickly as possible on the painting and let it just bubble and separate and do whatever happened. So I got tired of that and started to explain.
Fair
Well,
enough.
actually, what it was, it wasn't so much that I got tired of it. What happened was I'm in painting the metal sculptures. Uh, I have a very specific paint mixture that I use as a base. If it's going outside, I take a black semi-gloss paint and add in aluminum paint to that. So I end up with a graphite color. So it's
Okay.
not black. It has a bit of sparkle. It has a bit of life, but it's a beautiful color. And I paint every sculpture that isn't wood, of course, with that. And then on the sculptures that are meant for interior, I take a variety of rubbed bronze paint, hammer tone paints, and while the black paint is really wet, I keep spraying all of these other colors on it
Okay.
and end up with this beautiful patina. So
Right.
what happened
Right.
was I started to think, well, if oil and water react, then I'm going to do that on the paintings. So I started. Uh, my son and I made this beautiful table in my studio that is on legs. It can roll around. It has storage below it, but it also drops 12 inches on one side. So it's a
Okay.
bit heavier than I thought it was going to be. But what I do is I start painting flat, and usually put on different paints in the background, acrylic paint in the background, uh, splattered on, brushed on, watered, sprayed a bit, and let that dry, and then work other color on top of that. And then sometimes the background color comes through, and sometimes it doesn't, and I end up with whatever. But anyway, the painting, for instance, that you're looking at, uh, started off with a very black background, and I added various white paints on top of that, and then a lot of sprayed on water. Uh, and then I came in with the rubbed oil or the bronze or the hammer tone
Mhm.
paint, spray paint, and sprayed it on from a distance, not so that it was solid, but just so that it
Okay.
would get a
Okay.
spattery effect. So as soon as it lands, you get uh, like it kind of grabs and sticks. And then if you keep spraying water on and throwing on more acrylic paint, like splattering on, I have this plungy kind of springy thing that I use it to mix paint instead of the blender now. I use this, and then I can paint with this as well, right? And it makes, you can score it back and forth. It makes great lines.
Mhm.
Uh, but after I get a certain amount of water on there, then you can see that the sprayed on paint is separating from the surface that it did have because of the
Right.
water. Then when I tilt the table down, it starts to separate and slowly drag down the surface so that you get this really beautiful
Oh.
background like this. And then as soon as I like it, I flip it up to horizontal and let it dry. And then I start painting when it's dry, all of the other things. So that where I used to make paintings in one shot, now it takes me much longer and it's a much
Mhm.
more complicated process, but I'm much happier with the results because they're more complex, they're more interesting, and
Well, I was gonna say, yeah,
I'm having fun.
there's there's just more sophistication to how you're creating
Mhm.
those textures in them, right?
Right.
No, I'm excited to see them, Ron, and we've hit an hour.
We hit an hour?
We've hit
Okay.
an hour. So I'm gonna wind it up. Is there any I mean, all that to say is, as I talked about earlier, Ron's show will be coming up. We don't know if it'll be this fall or next spring. We just have to kind of see the way, the world kind of pans out with this pandemic. But hopefully we'll all be seeing these paintings we've been talking about in person sooner than later. So thanks, Ron, so much for
You're
joining
welcome.
us today.
It was
Your
fun.
yeah, your This was fun, and I like that it's kind of just more informal and a bit more of a candid discussion about the work. Of course, they are available to watch kind of after the fact too. So I'm just going to wrap it up and thank everyone for tuned in. There were some of you that I didn't even say hi to, like Mary Beth. Sorry, so great that you tuned in, and we'll work on Kath. Maybe you do need art instead of a vacation this year. We can start small. We would, of course, love to have your feedback as well. I would like to also just kind of reiterate that we are going to be looking to open for 2 days a week in the coming few weeks. In June, we will start opening for Friday and Saturdays from 11 to 4. We will announce these dates on our website and through social media. But otherwise, we'll be keeping some by appointment, keeping some days by appointment only as well, just for some people who would prefer that until, everything is kind of safe for us again. And also, again, a plug for the frame shop. Like the gallery, we're installing a new show. We will have a mini Ron Boaks section up in the gallery for the next couple months. So we invite you to come on down, either, like I said, on the Friday and Saturday when we're open to the public, or please feel free to also book a private viewing. But yes, we have the frame shop as well that is open. Candace is busy, but she will take on any project you have for her. All of the art that we talked about today is available for purchase as well. So once again, support artists, support, the gallery. If you loved any of one of the artworks you saw today and like to see additional images, let me know. I'll get you some more images. And also, we're always open at christineklassengallery.com. So Ron, thanks again. It was really great to kind of have this chat with you. It's been too long. And of course, because I didn't see you this month at the opening, let's just, say a prayer to the universe that we can get together soon and have a glass of wine together.
Great. Yes, absolutely. Sounds great. Thanks very much. I had fun.
No, I'm glad you did. I had a lot of fun too.
Good.
I know a conversation with you would be awesome, because you're a talker to begin with, and you have no part of your work bothers you to kind of talk about. So yes, thanks again everybody for tuning in. And if you have any other questions for Ron, don't hesitate to reach out to him. He's on Facebook and Instagram. So track him down and you can see all of these beautiful paintings as well. All right, everyone, you have a great weekend and a great evening, and we'll hopefully see you all again soon. Bye-bye.